My parents died when I was young. The house fire that murdered them also destroyed everything we owned. Every picture of our family, every heirloom and memento. To this day, I can barely remember my parents' faces. Thinking back, it all seems like a blur, like a ghostly image of a mother and a father without features or expressions. My brother Alex, who was only 9 at the time, managed to carry me out of the house. He was hailed as a hero, and the story was played on the local news. It managed to draw the attention of a small toy company called Taker's Toys. They had a small orphanage next to their toy company. In hindsight, it was probably all some tax-deductible scheme to make things look good, among other things. I remember a police officer with a tight, grim expression on his face coming into my hospital room after the fire. His dark eyes looked ancient and haunted, as if they were 100 years old. "I've got good news, little buddy," he said, patting me on the shoulder without smiling. I glared at his flat eyes. They shine like new copper pennies. "Larry Taker himself has volunteered to adopt you and your brother. You're going to live at Toyland." I frowned at him, a small boy in an extremely large hospital bed. I drew up the sheets to my neck pensively, using them like a shield. What's a Toyland?" I asked nervously. I looked at his uniform, seeing a name tag there reading, Sergeant Bowley. I somehow knew in that moment that I would see this man again. I don't know if I believe in psychic powers or anything, but I had a sudden flash of pale, bloodless faces, men shouting in the middle of chaos and bloodshed, and a blurry silhouette of someone in a police uniform running in with dead eyes. I blinked and it evaporated like a mirage. "You've never heard of Toyland?" Sergeant Bowley asked, staring at me without blinking. "It's a place where kids go when they don't have a family, I guess. All the kids there are adopted or orphans. They have a private school and everything. It's really one of the best case scenarios for you and your brother." I nodded. Even as a child, a creeping suspicion came over my mind. Was he trying to convince me or himself? We were taken to Toyland the next morning. Sergeant Bowley drove my brother, Alex, and me to the orphanage. As we pulled in, Alex put a thin arm around my shoulders, hugging me close. "It's gonna be okay, Herbie," he whispered. His blue eyes were wide and uncertain as we surveyed the complex. He was scarecrow thin, and the trauma and horror of the last few days still gleamed darkly behind his eyes. The complex was ringed by a black metal fence with sharp points like spears emerging from the top. A brightly colored building loomed overhead, its walls covered with fluorescent day glow, murals showing happy children playing with toys that were alive. Roosters and lizards with humanoid bodies and sharp pointed teeth playing in playgrounds in the murals with smiling children. Teddy bears with very human-like fingers and toes climbed trees with excited children. The children's mouths were all open and silently wailing, though whether in screams of pleasure or fear, I couldn't tell yet. The building had countless smokestacks on top of its flat roof, each billowing out clouds of black smoke into the air. An enormous sign on top of the building read, Taker's Toys. A black-clad guard in a guardhouse ambled slowly over to the car, leaning down close to Sergeant Bowley's face. I couldn't hear what they said through the divider in the police car, but the guard had a grim, set expression on his face. As the gate slid open and we drove past, I realized the guard had what looked like a small arsenal on his belt, holding 2 pistols and a dozen magazines. "Why does that man need so many guns?" I whispered in the back seat. Alex shook his gaunt face. "They probably just keep a lot of important stuff and money here," he said. "Oh," I muttered, as the police car slowly pulled up to the entrance, a tall archway with 2 swinging glass doors. All along the front of the building stood tall animatronic creatures, 6-foot tall teddy bears with huge black eyes, and humanoid roosters with blade-like combs extending from the top of their pointed heads. They all stood as straight as soldiers, staring ahead in an unblinking, statuesque way. I don't know if they were supposed to look cute, but as a young boy, they appeared terrifying and unnatural. Their mouths stayed straight and expressionless. They had an eerie, uncanny valley feeling to them. "What are those?" I asked Sergeant Bowley as he opened the door. Alex and I slid out, carrying all of our worldly goods in 2 small plastic bags. The fire destroyed everything we owned except for the clothes on our back after all. Some charity had given us toiletries and a couple pairs of clothes. I held it protectively against my body, afraid that someone might try to take away the last possessions I owned. "You don't know the Smiling Buddies? About Berry Bear? And the Minnow Minotaur?" he said, surprised. "Well, you'll learn about them inside. I thought kids loved that kind of stuff." "Our parents didn't really give us a lot of toys," Alex said. "They used to send us outside to play." "Ah, well, that's the best way," Sergeant Bowley said in a fatherly manner as he escorted us towards the building. Once we had gotten in within a few steps of the bizarre animal mannequins, they came to life. Their eyes suddenly glowed with a pale inner light that stayed far down in the black orbs with an eerie cataract gleam. With a whirring of gears and a grinding of metal, their heads ratcheted over to faces. Their slack, vacant mouths erupted into wide grins, showing squared teeth that gleamed with a silvery luster. Their movements were simultaneous and choreographed, like those of synchronized dancers. As one, they raised their right hands into the air in what was probably intended to be a wave, but in reality looked more like a Sieg Heil salute. Their mouths chattered as a song rang out all around us from hidden speakers, but the movements of their jaws didn't exactly match the words, increasing the uncanny valley feeling of the entire thing. They started dancing and twisting their bodies in a strange kind of jitterbug dance. "Welcome, boys and girls. Come to the land of toys, where nothing is as it seems, a place where a child's dreams can rise to the purest joys, and where the nighttime screams of the shadow that destroys fade away into nothing, leaving only smiles of spring." As soon as the song had finished, the animatronic's arms fell limply down, the light in their eyes fading back to blackness. With a final whirring of gears, they straightened back up into their soldierly postures and went silent. Silently, the 3 of us went inside. We went through the swinging door into the lobby where the floor was paved with black and white squares of gleaming marble. Long wooden tables ran perpendicular to the front wall, covered with computer monitors and TVs. Huge statues of toys surrounded us on all sides. An extremely fat man stood in the center of the empty chamber. His clothes were all bright day glow colors, fluorescent orange pants and a bright yellow button-up long-sleeve shirt that showed his curly hairs on his chest. His head was shaved and his scalp gleamed like a fleshy egg. "Welcome, kiddos," he said in a high-pitched feminine wheeze as the sweat trickled down his beet red face. He took a step towards us. His lips were thick and moist. In a moment, they rose into a wide smile, showing off a row of small, straight teeth. "My name is Larry Bittaker, and this is my toy company. But it is so much more. It's a place where sweet little children like you can live and grow forever, if you want." Slowly, Larry Bittaker lowered his fat face until it was only inches from mine. His many chins jiggled as he knelt down. His stubby, sweaty fingers came up and pinched my cheek. His beady blue eyes reminded me of those of a pig. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he turned to Alex, ruffling his overgrown bowl cut. Okay, kids, be safe. Larry, I'm gonna get taken off, Sergeant Bowley said, slowly stepping back from the pig-like man kneeling on the ground in front of him. Here's my card, by the way, if you kids ever need anything. He reached into his pocket, giving me and Alex copies of his business cards. I stared down at it, confused. No one had ever given me a business card before. It had his name and private phone number on it. I heard Sergeant Bowley turn and walk out the door, and then Alex and I were alone with the Toymaker. Larry Bittaker seemed to be the only one in the warehouse. We walked past corridors filled with empty toys and staring animatronics. Larry filled the air with his ramblings the entire time. You kids are going to love it here. I guarantee it, he said with exuberance. The other boys and girls are waiting for you downstairs. They're so excited to see new friends come in. A steep metal staircase spiraled down into the darkness. I grabbed Alex's hand nervously, looking up at Larry Bittaker. Well, go on, little ones. Aren't you coming with us? I asked in a small voice. Larry gave a boisterous laugh, his protuberant stomach jiggling like jello as his face grew even redder. Oh, no, he said. I don't go down there. The little ones tend to smell like poverty. His face drew close to mine. In fact, I can smell it on you right here. I backed away from the strange man. Alex's face formed into a scowl. You can't talk to us like that, he said defiantly, puffing his little bird chest out. If you two little shitheads don't start going down those stairs now, I'm going to throw you down them. Larry Bittaker growled, his porcelain face melting into a sneer. The mask of a gentle businessman had disappeared and something cold and dark revealed itself. Glancing backwards, Alex and I started down the spiral staircase, descending into the blackness. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw the gleam of blood-red emergency lights. They illuminated what looked like an enormous maze. As soon as we had gone past the threshold, a hidden door slammed behind us, cutting off the last white light overhead. I nearly jumped out of my skin when the metal door slammed closed with a ringing sound. What is this place? Alex asked in a small voice. I followed close at his heels. Where are the other kids? Maybe they're all hiding, I said hopefully. Maybe it's all a big game. Alex looked doubtful. Come on, Herbie, he said with deep-socketed eyes the color of ashes. Nowhere to go but forward. The silence rang out around us like a shriek. I could hear my own heart beating loudly in my ears. The floor was covered in steel gray carpets, the walls painted jet black. Incandescent bulbs with dark red glass hung overhead, spread out like every 20 feet or so on the dark ceiling. They cast the maze in a bloody glow. We moved forward randomly, taking turns to the left and right. There were strange obstacles in the maze, enormous chairs that looked like they were made for giants, mannequins with glowing red eyes and smooth plastic faces, and more animatronic characters, pigs and bulls and bears and roosters. The animatronics stayed still and dead, to my immense relief. As we wandered forward, I suddenly remembered something a math teacher told me a couple years ago, in what felt like another life. There is a way to get out of any maze without retracing your steps, the man in glasses had said in front of the classroom, drawing a small maze as an example on the whiteboard. All you have to do is take your left hand, hold it out to your side, and keep it against the wall. Keep going forward in the maze with your hand kept against the same wall, and eventually you will find the exit. I told Alex about this. A wan smile spread across his lips. That's a good idea, he said. I never heard that before. But what if there's no exit? I shrugged. Then who cares? We'll still explore the entire maze, as long as you keep one hand on the wall, I said. It doesn't matter if it's your right or your left, just as long as you keep following the same wall. Because a maze is really just one big wall if you think about it. We continued forward around a corner. We nearly tripped over something lying sprawled across the hallway. I looked down and repressed a scream welling up in my throat. The mummified body of a child laid there. I couldn't tell how long it had been dead or even whether it was a boy or a girl. The white beady eyes of the rat scurried around it, scraping off strips of the desiccated, jerky-like flesh of the corpse. The clothes were threadbare, worn away over time. The eyes stared vacantly up, as white as river stones. A smell like cinnamon and sulfur rose from the dead body. "Oh my God," I said, a rising sense of panic gripping my heart. I felt it like a tightening noose around my neck. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" Alex didn't say anything. I heard him hyperventilating by my side under the crimson glow of the maze's lights. "Did you hear something?" he whispered. I was staring down at the mummified corpse, transfixed. My head jerked up as if with a will of its own. I scanned the shadowy maze. Far down the corridor, I saw the gleaming of animatronic eyes, the faded cataract light deep in the sockets. With a quiet whirring of gears, they crept towards us. A few steps later, the silhouette passed under the bare red bulb overhead. It was an animatronic minotaur with two black bulging eyes. Its horns curved gracefully outwards. A smile like a razor split its metal face. There was a squealing of metal as the jaw unhinged, roaring with an ear-splitting electronic distortion. It had legs like a rhinoceros, thick and rounded. Its silver skin reflected the bloody light as it towered over us, staring down with a ferocious hatred. "Run!" Alex screamed, turning and sprinting away. I followed close at his heels, afraid to look back. The ground shook as the metal behemoth's heavy legs slammed the ground. We took random passageways in the maze, trying to lose the minotaur, but I could hear his heavy footsteps drawing closer by the second. Up ahead, I saw a ventilation shaft with the grill removed. A woman's face peered out, looking emaciated and filthy. "In here," she hissed through gritted teeth, her words barely audible over the cacophony of the minotaur's roaring. Her dirt-streaking face drew back, disappearing into the shadows. Alex was right behind me, and at that moment, I believed we both would make it. I leapt forwards, crawling on my hands and knees into the shaft. The thin metal echoed crazily around me as I frantically pulled myself forward. Once I had gone forwards a few steps, I looked back, expecting to see Alex right behind me. He was still at the entrance, however. His eyes were wide and terrified. They met mine for a brief moment. He tried to crawl in to pull himself forward. His small hands furiously dragged over the smooth metal. Then I saw two sharp steel hands reach down behind him, grabbing his legs. He screamed, reaching forwards towards me. I tried to take his hand, but I was too far away. A single heartbeat later, he got dragged backwards at a tremendous speed. A mixture of agony and mortal terror rolled across his face. "Alex!" I cried, crawling forwards. "Come back!" A splatter of blood exploding over the wall and end of the shaft. I turned away crying. I heard screaming behind me, a sound like bones shattering, something slamming over and over against a wall. I crawled forward through the vents, seeing the bare silhouette of a woman ahead of me, not realizing that I would never see my brother again. "Come on," the woman whispered. The vent turned at a 90-degree angle. It was so dark I could barely tell where I was going. I felt my way slowly forward with my hands like a blind person. "But what about my brother?" I asked. "We need to go back. He could be hurt." The woman didn't say anything. I heard her breathing quicken. "Just follow me, kid," she said. "It's right up here." I crawled forward, seeing a square of red light ahead of us. We came out into some kind of office room. A computer and a phone sat on a desk next to a crate full of protein bars and bottled waters. Posters covered the walls, many of them with bizarre slogans and pictures. "Feed the bear," read one, next to a cartoon picture of an enormous animatronic bear ripping an elderly woman to pieces. Her walker lay next to her, a crippled heap of useless metal. Her intestines were uncoiled around her like a den of red snakes. The woman turned to me, her brown eyes set and grim. She had streaks of what looked like dried blood running through her black hair and covering her face. "Who are you?" I asked. "What are you doing here?" "My name is Sarah," she said, "and I used to work for Mr. Bittaker. I helped him build this entire underground complex. This place is massive. There's rooms of food and water, monitoring rooms, miles of mazes, and probably lots of stuff I don't know about." "My name is Herbie. So why are you here?" I said. She shook her head sadly. "When he started to go insane, when I realized he was going to put children down there as prisoners in some evil game, I tried to blow the whistle, tried to get authorities involved. But he was bribing some government officials, and before I knew it, men in black ski masks broke into my house and injected me with some sort of drug. I blacked out and woke up here a few weeks ago," Sarah said. "We need to get out of here. We need to find Alex and tell people what's happening," I said. She shook her head sadly. "No one will believe us," she responded. I turned away, disgusted by her pessimism. She was supposed to be an adult, yet she seemed like she had given up all hope. I walked over to the computer, trying to turn it on. To my surprise, the screen came on with a white glare. "Hey, the computer works," I said. "Maybe we can use it to call for help." I lifted the phone to my ear, hearing a dial tone. "And the phone works. We can get out of here." "It's not going to be that easy," Sarah said glumly. I ignored her, fishing in my pocket for the card Sergeant Bowley had given me. Squinting down at it, I dialed his number. After a few rings, he picked up. "Hello?" he said. In a small voice, I answered. "Hi, this is Herbie. Please, sir, you need to come back and help me. The man locked me and my brother underground, and I think my brother is hurt. There's more people down here too. I don't know how many, and I saw a dead body. Kid, is this a prank?" Sergeant Bowley said quickly. "Do you know making false reports is a crime?" Sarah grabbed the phone from me. "This isn't a prank," she pleaded. "Please, you need to come back to Bittaker's Toys and get us out of here. Larry Bittaker is insane." The phone line abruptly cut off. The power to the room went out, plunging us into darkness. Over some hidden speakers, I heard Larry Bittaker's voice ring out. "That's cheating," he growled petulantly in his high-pitched voice, sounding like an angry child. "No communication with the outside world. Do you know what happens to cheaters?" Sarah grabbed my hand in the darkness, whispering in my ear. "Follow me," she said. "I know this place pretty well." She led me forward. A few moments later, I heard a doorknob turn. Red light flooded into the office room. We were looking at a half-constructed part of the maze. Wires and pipes in the wall hung exposed, and only the wooden framework of the walls had been put up. "What is this?" I asked. "Is the maze not done?" "The maze is never done," Sarah answered. Larry kept expanding it, changing contractors so that no one would ever know the entire maze besides him. I think he'll keep building it until the day he dies. He has enough money anyway. As quietly as we could, we moved forward through the maze, trying to put some distance between ourselves and the office room. We turned the corner with Sarah in the lead. I heard a sudden rearing of gears and a half-choked scream ahead of me. A moment later, I felt Sarah's body smash into mine. Warm blood splashed my face as I fell backwards on the ground. The wind whooshed out of my lungs. I looked up, seeing Sarah's pale, blood-spattered face staring up in horror a few feet ahead of me. A furry paw with claws like railroad spikes came down, slashing her across the chest. Drops of blood covered the walls and floor as Sarah thrashed and screamed, the animatronic bear standing over her with a dried-up husk of a face. Its fur had mostly fallen out, leaving a pale gray bear skull leering in its place.
"I'm Barry Bear,"
it growled in a low, slowed-down voice.
"I want to be friends with you forever. Let me give you a hug."
Sarah tried to crawl away as the jet-black eyes of Barry Bear narrowed. Its jaw chattered as silver needles of teeth glistened in its metal mouth. Her eyes met mine for a moment, filled with unfathomable pain and terror. I backpedaled away, scooting across the floor, my mind shell-shocked and unbelieving. The heavy body of Barry Bear came down with a force like a battering ram. Its metal arms slammed into Sarah's back, crushing her chest. Bone chips and gore exploded from her body. Blood poured out of her mouth in a rushing torrent. Her eyes rolled up in her head as she gargled on the ground. Barry Bear's head ratcheted to face me, blood streaming down its face and arms, its teeth chattering faster as if to show its increasing excitement and bloodlust.
"Can I give you a hug?"
it growled. "No! Get away from me!" I screamed. Pushing myself to my feet, I randomly ran through the maze, hearing the heavy footsteps of Barry Bear close at my heels. At the far end of the half-constructed maze, I saw a thick wooden door. "Help me!" I shrieked over and over. To my surprise, I heard a response from the other side of the door. "Stand back, kid," a deep voice said. Then there was a gunshot. The door's lock exploded inwards. The door shot open as someone kicked it, flinging it hard against the wall. I saw Sergeant Bowley standing there, his pistol drawn, his dead eyes flickering over the maze. They widened when they saw Barry Bear only a few footsteps behind me, closing the distance with every second. "Get down," he cried. I threw myself on the ground without question as he opened fire. The ear-splitting racket of the gunshots reverberated all across the maze. I continued crawling forwards towards Sergeant Bowley, towards safety. I saw more cops running in behind him. I looked up, seeing Barry Bear sprinting towards Sergeant Bowley in a blur, its animatronic face half blown away and revealing the steel underneath. It had an insane expression of maniac bloodlust. It raised its right hand, the gleaming metal claws hanging over Sergeant Bowley's head. Everything seemed to freeze then. Sergeant Bowley had his gun up. Frantically, he fired one last shot at the bear's face. The top of his head blew off as the claw came down, ripping through Sergeant Bowley's head with a crack. The scalp hung down in a sick, wet flap as his brains leaked out of his broken skull. Slowly, he fell back. Barry Bear followed him down with a tearing of metal and a slowing of gears and its mechanical voice. The heavy animatronic landed on top of Sergeant Bowley's body, crushing him instantly. A spreading pool of blood marked the site of the horrific murder. Screaming and crying, I crawled towards the police. They carried me outside, under a sky the color of wet cotton. I breathed in the clean air, looking around frantically for any signs of my brother. The police carried out other emaciated, frightened-looking children out of the maze, but not Alex. They put me in the back of the car and drove me out of there, away from Bit Taker's toys and the nightmares that waited underneath. It happened yesterday, Thursday evening, monotone, rain and cars passing by, sidewalk. I was tired, dizzy, blurry, hard day at work. I get off the bus and pull my hood over my head, pouring. I look up for a second. I don't know why. Don't ask. Just an instinct. I see this face. It happens so sudden and disappears in a fraction of a second before I could even process it. I'm just tired, I say to myself. Whatever. I walk from the bus station to my building. I don't know what is happening, but all the cars have their brakes worn out or something. 'Cause every time they slow down, I hear this high-pitched noise. I walk, heading down, minding the rain. Feet soaking wet, should have worn boots. It's been 15 minutes since I left the bus station, and as I'm heading towards my apartment complex, the traffic noise and chatter gets tuned out. My block is surrounded by a park, and I pass it on my way home. The birds are unusually talkative today. If it wasn't for the rain, I think I'd hear this high-pitched noise even clearer. Finally, I get home. The board at the entrance of building A7 has new announcements. Whoever's throwing their trash right outside, spend the additional 10 minutes and walk to the fucking bins. Apartment 203B. I know you have a dog, and it's against the rules. Then, stapled in a corner on the board, please whistle back. What? Weird prank to try out. Whatever. As I open the front door, I get flashed by this face again. I stop in the doorway. Now once is explainable, but twice. I'm way too tired, so I just stared in the distance for a while before I get in and turn towards the dark hallway outside. Suddenly, a long, teasing whistle echoes back at me. Who's that? What are you doing out there? Silence. I shine my phone flashlight into the darkness. Nothing. Of course the light doesn't reach the end of the hallway. Another whistle, this time closer. Something moves in the shadows, fear taking over me. I shut the door behind me, lock it, then check 10,000 times. The whistling continues from right behind the door. Long, playful. Stop it. It's not funny. And I'm tired. I check the time. It's 9 p.m. Already? I swear I got off work at 6. The whistling continues, this time in the form of a tune that sounds really familiar. I ignore it. Right. So I didn't sleep last night. The whistling echoed from the hallway, the bathroom window, and even from random rooms in my house. I took a shower and got out to find another note saying, "Please whistle back." It's torture, really. This morning I thought I was going to kill someone or myself. The whistling was almost continuous, teasing, playful, melodious, but unbearable. I felt I had no choice. Bloodshot eyes, twitching hands. I stepped in the middle of the hallway and whistled back. Silence followed. Then, another short whistle. I did the same. Suddenly, my front door, which mind you had been locked, slammed wide open and the light in the hallway switched off. Then before I could react, it slammed back shut. I went to check and it had remained unlocked. I tried to lock it, but every time I checked, it would still be unlocked. Anyone can get in now, or anything, but I fear it already did. The whole day has been off. I keep getting this headache, and I can't stare in the mirror for more than 10 seconds without getting dizzy. I keep finding random objects placed randomly all around my house. I think I'm catching glimpses of it in the corner of my eye, the same face that looks like a tribal mask. I fear I accidentally let something sinister into my house. As I'm typing this, I can see something reflected in my monitor. It lets out a playful whistle, but this time, I don't respond.